And we are live. Wow, I'm really excited. We're joined this hour by Roberto Flores. He is he's a former professor, an educator, organizer. And I gotta tell you, bro, you are someone who, been conducting a series of interviews, and everyone says you got to get Roberto Flores on. So I'm so excited to be joined with you this hour. You're known for a number of things. You taught, Cal State LA for many years. You were instrumental in the foundation of the Eastside Cafe. But before we get into all that, can you tell us a little bit about how your story begins? When did you first start getting involved in, when the idea to become an organizer, become a teacher, an educator? Where does this all begin?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint, but I think it began in Oxnard. I was born and raised in Oxnard, California, an agricultural town. I picked crops with my parents. I picked strawberries for about 7 years, lemons for about 4 years, everything else, tomato, everything else. And I was very interested in social justice from the very beginning. I saw how people were treated. I didn't like the way we were treated. I saw my father angry at a boss one time, and for good reason. And I saw him throw a prune at him once we had gone up north in San Jose. He when he got dropped off the truck, he got a prune and threw it at the truck. And out of kind of anger and frustration for the way people treated us. So I also I felt the sting of racism. I was born in La Colonia, and so if you stepped out on La Colonia, you very much felt different, and people made you feel inferior. I felt that inferiority. And we lived next to the beaches. My wife always tells me, "You guys live next to the beaches, yet you didn't go to the beach." It's amazing that why didn't you guys go to the beach? And I tell her that we weren't wanted at the beach. The beach were reserved for upper class whites in the main. If you went to the beach and you became a surfer, you were considered whitewashed. And so we were from Colonia. Uh, we were farm workers. I set up a tutorial when I realized that a lot of the children needed help when I was a junior in high school. And I could see that the kids were struggling and they weren't treated with respect. And so I set up this tutorial thinking, well, let's help them navigate, do better. And then we ended up analyzing the whole experience and concluding that it wasn't the children that needed help; it was the school system that needed help, and changes. And so we started doing some of that. By chance, um, I went to because I had asthma. I went up north to Ojai to school. I was were only two Mexicans in that school. And so there was even more of an isolated feeling. I was living up there by myself as a 16, 17-year-old and for a semester. But I happened to do really well in school and academically. I guess it was just that I was by myself, I had nothing to do but study. And during the weekends, I would go back to Oxnard and pick lemons. It was only like 20 minutes away. And then come back on the weekdays. And so I did really well, went back to Santa Clara. I went to Santa Clara High School, a Catholic high school. At that high school, you had the ranchers, the rich ranchers, rich Catholic German descendant ranchers, together with the farm workers, the Catholic farm workers. And the tension and racism, you could cut it. It was very thick and it was very painful. And one of the things that I was determined to do is, and this, I was obsessed with it, is to show them that we were intelligent as well. And out of a reaction to that situation, I studied, and I studied hard. And but I didn't know that I could go to UCLA. So during a summer program from UCLA, these friends came over. These people came over. A team of student volunteers came over from UCLA, and they set up a tutorial. I told them, "Hey, did you guys know we already had a tutorial here?" And so then we met, and we worked on a tutorial together, a summer tutorial. And one Chicano from East LA, Luis Ortiz Franco, was part of that team from UCLA. He asked me, where are you going to school? And all of us from Colonia, we all went to Ventura College. We didn't know that we could go elsewhere, even if we had good grades. I had like junior, senior year, I had like a 3.8, 3.9, almost a 4.0. And he told me, no, apply for UCLA, and I did, and I was admitted. And my surprise, I never knew I could do that. And this was 1966, so the previous year, financial aid had come in because of the Black movement, the Black Civil Rights Movement had created the Civil Rights Law Amendment, and they created the EOPS and the financial aid offices. So I was able to go to UCLA on financial aid. It's since 1966, and when while here in LA, then I was very much involved in forming UMAS, United Mexican American Students. This is a organization before MECHA. Then I was also involved, not as much, but I was involved in forming MECHA. And I also got influenced here by the Brown Berets, and we were able to take back the Brown Berets to Oxnard. One of the things I did in Oxnard after my first year in 1967 is that I hired myself as a work study student. So normally somebody else hires you, but I formed a fictitious organization. I'm saying this because the statute of limitations is probably over. But I formed a fake organization called Colonia Tutorial Project with the help of a priest. And then I hired myself at work study wages. And I bought a van, an old VW van for about $300. And I went up and down the streets of Colonia, knocking on every single door, recruiting people to college. And I must have recruited like 60 friends and neighbors. And they all went to different colleges, they from community colleges to San Jose State to UCSB and so on. None of these folks knew of financial aid. And so, we when the next year we did it again, and this time we hired them because they were all under work study. So we hired 40 students, and then we recruited others. So this was a very important recruitment project. Then also we set up the Brown Berets. The Herrera brothers, Fermin Herrera, known for, he's a Nahuatl instructor at CISA now, or for years now, maybe for over 45 years. And his brother, Andres Herrera, were both at UCLA as well. And we were roommates on and off. And we grew up together in Colonia in the projects. And we formed the Brown Berets, Oxnard, and then formed chapters in Santa Barbara. We helped form chapters. We didn't form. We helped them. Santa Paula, Camarillo, Ventura, Oxnard. And these were, of course, youth that was much more militant than the previous CSO type of organized community service organization type organization that Cesar Chavez had developed. We were much more adamant, militant, and demanding justice instead of asking for justice or proposing justice. We were demanding it. And from there, I went to Salinas on a teacher corps project, and there I got fired and thrown out from the teacher corps. I wasn't able. I finished my master's there, but at UC, not what is it? The University of California at I forget right now. But I finished my master's in the program, and then but I wasn't able to get my teaching credentials, secondary teaching credentials, and so I from there I joined the East Bay Labor Collective, which was studying Marxist-Leninism, and I studied with them, and then we came back to Oxnard, and there was I was part of a very important strike that brought in the United Farm Workers. It was a 1974 strawberry strike in Oxnard that were more than probably the largest historic strike, more than 6,000 workers. And, we had, here's where we had some differences and criticisms of Cesar. As much as the good that Cesar did and the United Farm Workers, he was reporting the undocumented the strikers that were, the people that were breaking the strike. He was utilizing the immigration department to arrest them. And we felt that was a huge contradiction. And we struggled with Caesar to try to see that was not the best method to win a strike, that he was utilizing a state agency that was not interested in us winning strikes, but was more interested in the status quo and the power of the farmers. So I ended up being isolated during that strike at the end, but they couldn't really isolate me because I was very rooted. I grew up there. My father had a little restaurant. I come from a family of 14 children. And when that happens and you have a little restaurant, all my brothers and sisters have deep roots and a lot of friends. And so we were well known. So Cesar couldn't really isolate me or marginalize me like he wanted. But, it worked to an extent. But we, hold on, okay? We were able, we won that strike. And we brought in the United Farm Worker Union. The day we did that, the day we won the strike, all the rest of the field work like lemons and oranges and tomato and lettuce and apio and celery, everything went up $1 an hour, or went up in piecework went up significantly. So we the ranchers, of course, hated us, hated me as well, tried to kill me, but we were so then from there I came to LA. By then I was part of a group, of a Marxist-Leninist group called the League of Revolutionary Struggle. Prior to that, I was part of the August 29th movement, Marxist-Leninist. And so what that was a large a collective of groupings from Marxist-Leninist Chicano, mainly groupings. We also had blacks and whites, but mainly Chicanos throughout the country, Texas, Arizona, New York, some of the Puerto Rican folks. And then we formed a larger Marxist-Leninist organization that included Chinese and some of the Japanese groups from here, East Wind, Iwar Kuen, the Chinese Marxist-Leninist group, and the Black Workers Communist organization that Mary Baraka belonged to. So we united with them as well. So now we formed the Marxist, the League of Revolutionary Struggle, Marxist-Leninist. From there, we continued to there was an aspect, there were several aspects of the Marxist-Leninist formation and groupings that didn't fit well with me, because it was, to me, it was too top down for my taste, and not enough authority at the bottom. It was too pyramidal, too top down. And so, I rejected that top downness, and wanted something much more horizontal. Didn't know where to find it or even how to create it. It was just more organically the way I organized in the community, much more horizontal. And,
So one of the
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, you've given me so many things to ask or expand upon. But one of the things I've had the opportunity to interview a number of people who coming from Oxnard or coming from Santa Barbara, coming from just different Santa Rosa even. So I don't think people who don't like live or haven't lived or spent significant time on the California coast realize just how intensely segregated the whole of the California coast really is. I don't think they have an appreciation for just like how it's like apartheid in paradise or something like that. And it's beautiful. The beaches are beautiful. The ocean is beautiful, but the way that the society is structured, it's really intensely segregated, is it not? I mean,
You can feel it a lot more, because the class, it is like an apartheid. It started off like a plantation. There were ranchers that had their homes in the middle of the fields, and surrounding those fields were worker encampments, and the Colonia was one of those encampments, one of the original parts of Oxnard. And all it is a farm worker encampment. And and it's very, the racism was very intense and stark. And so there you have places like Colonia, or in every single city you have a service community, normally a farm worker service community that does other service jobs, that live in these poor areas. Camarillo has a section, and Santa Barbara has a section. Ventura has a section, the avenues, of worker and farm worker communities that service the rest of the community. Yeah.
The other thing you spoke to earlier when you were talking about your kind of your educational journey, you're talking about going to it starts off you're involved in you're with everyone else in this really segregated kind of community, and later on you go to this Catholic high school, or you go another somewhere else, you're one of the very few Mexicans. So like there's this kind of idea that like you can escape certain things, but like oftentimes when you end up in these situations where you're like the kind of smart Mexican or whatever, you get really punished for your intelligence in these circles, because you're not supposed to be smart, right? You're supposed to get back to work. So can you talk to some of the experiences you had at that time where you got punished for where you were actually punished for your intelligence?
Well, it wasn't just there's two sides of that, because if you're intelligent and then develop that innate intelligence that everybody has, but if you work hard towards developing that, you could either use it to to service and manage, be part of the managing of the system and managing of your community for the system, or you could use it for disrupting and the social order, and that's who I was. So I was severely punished for that, you know. So arrested many times and shunned by. I went to my a funeral, my dad's funeral actually, and there were some people there at Santa Clara Church that had graduated with me, and they wouldn't talk to me because of the strawberry strike. We were able to um, make an impact and change and force them to treat people better, and they never forgave me for that. So they these are people from Santa Clara High School that as children they weren't as racist as now, you know, 25 years later, 30 years, 40 years later, when they are the ones managing their father's um, farms, and where stories are passed down to them, where they witnessed it, because this was 75, 74, 75. So they were already about maybe 22 years old, and they witnessed it, you know, along with their parents, and they were very, very angry. Were the farmers there, although Catholic, felt that Mexicans were inferior and were to be their servants. And so when we spoke up and said, no, that's not going to happen, that's not the way it is, and we showed them, and then they were very afraid of us, and treated us with a lot of disdain.
So in that same vein, what was campus life like at UCLA more broadly? I know
It was I mean, well, when I got there in 1966, there were about 19 Latinos there, and two. Well, Luis Ortiz Franco. You know, you know, we can. We used to, when I first got there, it was a shocker for me because I come from a rural, small town community, um, agricultural community that's not that far from UCLA, but it is really, really far culturally. It's a million miles away culturally and class wise. And I felt completely isolated and lonely. And you know, I was in another world, you know, that didn't where I didn't belong. And there were some folks that let me know that, but there was also, this is the 60s, so you know, there's also great movements afoot, and I was able to be part of those movements, and there was changes and acceptance to a certain degree. So it was a shock and it was isolating, but at the same time, we were able to um, survive and organize, unite, and then recruit and increase the number of folks. I remember one time when it was only a few of us, we were walking down Gailey Avenue, I believe it's called, and a fraternity threw ice at us, and then had a sign that said, "No dogs, no Mexicans, no niggers allowed in this fraternity, Phi Kappa Psi." And we reported it, and we took the charter away. I mean, because of what they did, and they demonstrated. And I remember there was a few was up on top of the hill looking down at maybe 2,000 frat boys, really pissed off. And we were, you know, they're observing them and ready to run if we had to. But that's the type of situation it was. It's a lot of intense racism. And by the time I got out in 1970, 71, because I took, because we were out on strike a couple of quarters, I had to go extra a couple quarters. 1971, there were 2,000 Chicanos, Latinos Chicanos on campus.
Wow.
So we were able to make a big difference.
Yeah, no, that's a huge number. I mean, but UCLA, I mean, like it's a side of so much struggle, but I mean, to this day, it's a profoundly racist place. I remember reading this thing about um I was looking up just how many HSIs there are, right? And I know there's a lot of problems with that because they can use the money however they want. But I was reading UCLA, and UCLA is not an HSI, and I was reading their statement on it, and they're very proud not to be an HSI, which is like really incredible to me. They're like, well, we're not going to lower our standards for anybody, and like that's like their stance, and it's really quite incredible. The way when you think about the hunger strike, you think about what you're describing, it's in the city of Los Angeles. It's quite profound.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're fairly insulated, and they're because of its it's generational. Like what during the 60s, for instance, Santa Barbara, which is a very conservative school now, and was prior to 1968 or 1967, suddenly exploded, and became one of the most radical UCs, and universities in California and in the United States. So you never know, what's underneath, and and the transformations that these campuses go through. But right now they're relatively conservative.
Yeah. So can you speak a little bit to so you said you were talking a little. I want to talk about Cal CLA
Yeah.
and Eastside Cafe and all those things. But before we
So,
get into that,
so
I'm
after
really
after
before,
the
uh,
league,
before we get into that, I'm really interested in asking you about this question. You mentioned quite a few. You mentioned a few times about being involved in Marxist-Leninist study circles, but then not really liking the top-down kind of like democratic centralism kind of way of organizing. But what about the analysis? Um, what about the analysis were you drawn to, and what have you like kind of
yeah,
maintained? What have you like kind of put
the
away?
the economic analysis, and even some of the social analysis, I I I'm a Marxist, in that manner, that it's important analysis and basic, um, but the application of democratic centralism, as you mentioned, was the problem. The application of what the dictatorship of the proletariat, meant, was a problem for me. And so, um, we the League of Revolutionary Struggle disbanded, and I supported that disbanding it, and many of my friends were angry at me for that as well. So, but I felt that we needed to discuss this thing out, and as we did, there was a decision to disband. It's a huge organization, um, and then a lot of people were groping in the dark, for a few years, and some of them reconstituted Marxist collectives and circles and organizations, and some of us didn't, and continued doing community work and trying to get guidance from the community itself. Uh, but also, like you said, we never abandoned the analysis, the basic economic, analysis. And although, Marx did not do an analysis from a perspective of people of color, and there was there were extensions, and to some of the main premises and assumptions of Marxism that could apply. And so, but when the Zapatista uprising occurred in '94, I got very excited. I got, I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And it was all in terms of inside of me as well, because, it's not that the Zapatistas showed us anything. The main thing they showed us is a mirror, showing us that we are them, and that we too, and it resonated completely with me, and even their tactical stance on nonviolence at this point. It's not a strategy. It's a tactical question whether you're going to take up arms or you're not. And that's the way I felt. I felt that it wasn't necessarily. I contested all the Marxist theory that we were there to overthrow the system when we were ill-equipped and to overthrow the system. And as much as we wanted to get ready, we were always diverted. And so we were never able to form like a large enough army to overthrow the system. And so I felt, well, there's got to be another approach. And I think the Zapatista insight and analysis to transformational change and creating another society was very helpful in answering those types of questions that we had. And so I started relating immediately when the Zapatista uprising occurred. 5 days later, I figured out a way to get out there. I went to Self-Help Graphics and asked Sister Karen for help. She gave me 5 prints of some of the most famous artists and Chicano artists, and I went and sold them for $125 a piece. And I was able to get enough money to go to Chiapas with a delegation of 12 other people, including Blaise Bonpane and Gloria Romero. There was, there was a few other people. But we were out there on the 5th of January 5th, and the uprising was on the 1st. So there was still fighting going on. And I was very impressed as to the Zapatista analysis and have been since. So we've this whole question of the localization and the developing of local autonomy and networks of local autonomous communities, to me, is more of a bottom-up, more of a horizontal approach. It's more my fit. I work well with Marxists. I don't disdain Marxist folks and Marxist work, but we do ask that they respect that we respect each other.
Yeah, no, of course. I got to be on that. So, but I'm just really interested. But the kind of the economic analysis is something that it's still kind of it's something that you retained, and it's something that you think it was worth holding on to, the analysis. I mean, the way of looking at the centrality of the economy, or have you moved in a different direction, or is that?
Well, class analysis is important, and it's a factor, and it's a way society is structured. But it's also there's also the whole question of racism and white privilege, and even within the movements, when you have Marxists involved that are white Marxists, they utilize that as a way to usurp leadership, even within communities of color. And so, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's the correct thing to do. I think there's got to be more of a horizontal relationship, and more of a recognition of white privilege, and so and also more of a recognition that it's not just class struggle. That there's a huge element of racism involved that is also structures society.
Almost definitely. So let's get to Cal State LA. So
then after I come back, we're I worked in factories, and from the time I got fired over at Salinas, in Teacher Corps, where I was working with the East Bay Labor Collective, I then went to work in factories. So I worked in factories for the next 15 years. And so then I went back to working in colleges after that. And so in 1990, I got a job at Loyola Marymount and worked there for 10 years in Chicano Latino Student Services. And then I started working at Cal State LA as an adjunct professor as well. But in 2097, we had an encuentro with the Zapatistas. These were cultural workers, poets. You were too young then, Matt, to go. How old were you in 94 and 97?
87, I was like 15.
Oh, yeah. You might shoot.
I'm older than I look, but
Yeah.
that's a good and bad thing.
So we had Chusma, the Teatro, a bunch of bands, Aslan Underground, Quetzal, and many others. They were able to. They organized this. They had this organization called the. What was it? I forget right now, but I'll remember. But they organized an encuentro with the Zapatistas in '97, and this encuentro was for a week, and it was an amazing encuentro. 120 artists from mainly the LA area went to this encuentro and worked with Zapatista communities on different workshops, from women workshops to music workshops to different types of workshops that where they develop performance arts outcomes out of the workshop to as a product of the workshop. So when they came back, there was between 97 and 2000, for 3 years, there was a lot of searching around as to what to do with all this information and what to do with this feeling, what to do with this knowledge. And we started looking around for, so what we did was we were having these meetings at the house, at my house, called Sandia Sundays. And all it was is just discussions of the present situation, getting a grasp of the objective conditions where we were at. And then we started talking about what to do. And so the first thing we did was that we had these events that went like a traveling event, a musical event that went from, like from East LA to Highland Park to El Sereno to Lincoln Heights and so on. And then after that, we decided to, my wife proposed that we get a space. And for a long time, we debated that because that's just an additional more work and could take us off into something else. But we decided, okay, let's set up a space. And so we set up the Eastside Cafe as an autonomous space, as Zapatista-inspired autonomous space. And we've been there ever since. This was 2003, so it's 17 years ago.
So when you set up the Eastside Cafe, I think when was the year that they were trying to? There was this, I mean, I'm sure there's been some very memorable things over the years way before this, but what I remember is there was an attempt to they were raising the rent, or there was some kind of thing that you had to raise a lot of money. What was the threat to the Eastside Cafe?
What happened? It happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There was the owner sold the building to a developer, and the developer was going to do a strip mall there.
Right.
And he was already in escrow, And so what we did was that we set up a meeting with him without him knowing. He was going to do a walkthrough his new property, and we brought him in, sat him down, showed him a few films, and talked to him about what we do and what we've done and our history. And he thought, okay, this is nice, but he made a statement. He said, "We're in America, right? Do you believe in democracy in America?" You know that, and what he meant was, "Do you believe in my right to buy, whatever I want to buy?" You know,
Right.
and
My right
so
to buy and sell, yeah.
you know, we told him, "Well, we believe in democracy, but not that's not our democracy. That's a democracy of the rich. You guys have all the rights because you have all the money." So then, he walked out and didn't make any decision and started touring, and we started following him and demonstrated behind him. And so we got to him. We were very loud, and then he came back at the end and he says, "Okay, I'll tell you guys what. I'll give you 10 days to come up with a bona fide offer. And that way you can't say that I never gave you a chance." And we asked, I told him, give us 15 days, 10 days. This is a $1.2 million building. We would have to come up with like $400,000, given it's a commercial building. And that's going to be very difficult for us. And he says, no, you got 10 days. And so this was, I believe, May 1st, no, May 2nd. So by May 12th, Mother's Day, uh, we set up a GoFundMe. We had anticipated this, and we had already contacted several people, including Aloe Black and Maya Jupiter, and asked them, we had been discussing purchasing the building, and for 2 years, we had been developing plans. And so this wasn't a complete surprise to us, but we still didn't have the money, although we knew we had a plan, but we didn't have the money. But Maya Jupiter and Aloe gave us $60,000, which we threw in a GoFundMe in increments. And because it was an anti-gentrification struggle, and because the Eastside Cafe by that time was well known, we had already 15 years of being in the community. Then a lot of people responded, and we raised. I think we raised something like over close to 100,000 by Mother's Day, and so in 10 days. So the owner backed out, and told us, you got first place. He so that's what occurred.
Wow. So you got the initial big donor from Aloe Black and Maya Jupiter, and you spaced it out to look like there was like mini donations, or is that how that?
Yeah, we didn't put it all in at once. We put it in increments of 10, 15, $20,000 to be able to work the spirit of donating, and for people not to get depressed. And we were able to rally that money up, to $80,000. We ended up raising 200,000.
Yeah.
And then ELAC came in and bridged the loan.
Mm. So for those, this is intended for a wide cross section of society. A lot of people will see this who don't necessarily aren't as familiar with maze places, and they don't know what they don't know. So can you tell us a little bit more about like kind of like the East Side, and what like kind of like I'm not necessarily a mission statement, but kind of like what is the East Side Cafe? What are its goals? What is it there for? What does it do?
Yeah, basically the Eastside Cafe is an autonomous space whose mission is to facilitate the organic yearning and existence, partial existence of autonomy. local autonomy. And El Sereno has a long history of struggles, and and those struggles, in essence, are struggles that make a statement that say, we, the people of El Sereno, will decide our own destiny. You're not going to tell us what to do, and we don't like what you're trying to do to us. We're going to decide what happens here. And so it's a struggle for self-determination. And so that's what we're trying to develop autonomy to the extent of a parallel governance structure. So in other words, we're saying every local community should have its own local autonomy and local independent. Autonomous, by the word autonomy, means autonomous from government, from US government, autonomous from corporations, and so that autonomy and the decisions that come out of an independent thinking, because we're autonomous in terms of our thinking, then it reflect a true self-determination of a community. But in order to get ourselves to do that, any type of self-determination, we have to know each other. We have to know who that self is, and we have to engage each other and unite around these issues. So the Eastside Cafe provided a perfect way of bringing in the community for different events. So we have 14 collectives, and we've always had about 10 to 14 collectives functioning at the Eastside to bring in the community, and the community gets to know itself and interact as a community, help each other out with different things. So as we're developing community, we're also developing self-determination.
Yeah.
And we're not teaching the community anything. It's the community already knows this and automatically responds to a threat this way, but we're just trying to facilitate and enhance that autonomous process and yearning for self-determination.
Yeah. You mentioned El Sereno's got a long history of struggle, a long history of being involved in things. I mean, like obviously, like Wilson was the first high school to walk out. There's a number of things, but right now, El Sereno was kind of in the national news not too long ago. It was kind of funny because it was reported across the country as Northeast LA. But, it's obviously it was in El Sereno, which was with the taking of the Caltrans home. Can you speak a little bit to just a broad picture to those who might not be aware
Yeah.
of that struggle right now?
Caltrans is California Transportation System, has done a lot of damage to communities, different communities throughout, but especially communities of color. When they develop roads and freeways and so on, they go through the path of least resistance, or the resistance that doesn't count, because most communities resist, even though they're poor and people of color, but those types of resistance don't get the support, the general support from government bodies or elected officials that other communities do. So Caltrans was planning a freeway to go right through El Sereno, right through South Pasadena and Pasadena. So for years now, for years, the tenants and plus the communities have been fighting against the freeway, and have been fighting on two fronts, against the freeway and for the maintaining and return of the houses to the community. And so the maintenance aspect, they're slumlords. They're arrogant, they're disrespectful slumlords that we've been fighting for the last 50 years. And so we in the last 7 years, we one of the formations that developed out of this was United Caltrans Tenants. And one of the aspects of this whole thing, or one of the tactics that Caltrans used, was what we call depopulation of the corridor. What they were doing is that as they were, people were dying through attrition, through evictions, and through pressure, and through maltreatment, and disrespect, people were moving out. Well, they would not rent those houses out again. They started doing this about 10 years ago in a larger scale. They had done this before, but they really did this and more intensely during the last 10 years. And so now you had like 60 houses empty, 60 to 70 houses, empty houses in El Sereno. So you had a depopulation and a killing of the community again for the second time. And so we've been very upset about that. And then the homeless population is growing, and they have 70 empty houses. And then COVID came. So we said, that's it. And so we got together with ACE, the organization that was also very supportive in the Oakland mothers takeover of a house, and LACLA, another housing advocacy organization that's centered in Boyle Heights, and DSA and other organizations. And we all coalesced and created Reclaiming Our Homes. And this went along with the Eastside Cafe very much, because, it's a reclaiming and reconstruction of our community that we've always been. That's the way, that's who we are. And so, and reclaiming our lives, not just our homes, everything, reclaim everything that's been taken from us. And so we organized, and we were able to reclaim 20 homes. And it took breaching, and what we did was that we sent a letter directly to the governor 10 minutes after we had breached. That got sent to the governor, letting him know that we had breached and that we needed his that his rhetoric needed to be activated and put into action. So we sent the letter to his wife. We had contact to his wife through email, and it was to make sure it would get to him and that he would read it. And so he then, what he did was that he asked the police department to step back, to stand down, and then he asked the Highway Patrol, which protects state property, to stand down as well and not to evict the reclaimers. And that's, we were able to do that. And now we're negotiating with the city, because we weren't sure how this was going to shake, what was going to shake loose off of this hard hit, because in every single article, there's got to be at least 100 articles that have been written on this struggle. Caltrans, gets a black eye, because what's Caltrans doing, with 200 empty homes at a time like this? And so they're willing to pass some of the houses over to the city, to HACLA, and HACLA is working with us to keep the reclaimers there, and then possibly open up more houses for more tenants. So we're asking for 40 to 50 houses that are empty, and then we're also trying to encourage South Pasadena and Pasadena to do the same, because the 200 houses are spread out through the 3 cities. But it's shaken Caltrans to the extent where they're willing to very much extend these houses to the cities on a what they're calling a transitional housing lease to each one of these cities. And all they have to do is go after these houses and quickly convert them into, or fix them up a little bit and make them habitable. So that's where we're at right now. But eventually we want to, of course, keep the tenants there, and then bring them into full tenancy and eligible to purchase their homes at an affordable level, at permanent affordable housing, with rights to a modified affordable purchase.
Yeah. So what are the ways that people hearing this now, who are like, oh my God, this sounds incredible. How do I connect? What can I do? What would you advise, people just watching this right now? What are some ways that people can support?
Reclaiming Our Homes has a website. So do we. We are also forming a land trust, and that's gonna, if it doesn't already have a website, it will soon. So it's the El Sereno Community Land Trust. And for the purpose of partnering up with some of the tenants and possibly helping them to purchase, maybe purchasing together with them, so that we begin to develop this more collective sense of land. Um, so we're trying to push this concept of land trust, which isn't too popular in some of the more progressive circles. It's very popular, becoming very popular, but some of the more radical sectors don't exactly like it. It is a nonprofit, and we do believe in the nonprofit industrial complex. I mean, but we also think that there are times and ways that we can push the nonprofit, that we can push it to the edge of the possibilities within capitalism, and have it be a tool towards a transformation of capitalism. So we haven't lost our way. I know a lot of people um, are asking, and we ourselves are asking, what are we doing with a nonprofit? Because the Eastside Cafe will never be a nonprofit. I mean, we hold strong about that. It's all by donation. We don't have grants. We don't have anything. All the 14 collectives are by donation. Whatever they do, they get donations. And we've helped, and we've done this for 18 years. So we truly believe in that. But this land trust is necessarily a nonprofit, and we had to develop the land trust because we didn't know what to do with the building. Now that we bought the building, the Makers building where the Eastside Cafe was, we were asking ourselves, well, what do we do with this building now? How do we make sure that this building will be dedicated to the community for this particular purpose of autonomy and self-determination and perpetuity? How do we do that? And so we had to have something formal. At the same time, there has to be a progressive community mind that guides that formality.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. Okay, so we'll drop the link below, figure out ways people connect. So what advice would you have to someone who just who wants to dedicate their life, as much as they can, or dedicate their time to the struggle to making things better, but they just don't know how. They don't know how to get. They just don't know how to. They don't see an entryway in. What should they do?
Yeah, see, so like if you think in terms of revolution, and uh, it's an enormous thing, and it is overwhelming. But if you think of revolution at the local level, it can be done. You know, let's focus on everybody on their local, in a coordinated way, and we can do things. We can make big changes that can become transformational with time. And I would suggest that they look around in their local, and figure out ways that they could that take their movements and struggles for self-determination to another level, where they start forming structuring independent governments, independent governance structures, like an assembly, like a local assembly. And that's at the phase that we're in right now, because shadowing this land trust formal nonprofit thing is a community, of people that are busy moving and moving towards the development of infrastructures, governance, self-governance infrastructures, where we set up a parallel government to the existing government. When we look at the government we have Wisar, who is, I believe, going to jail pretty soon on bribery charges. And we have no government. It's a rotten government. So it's a big vacuum. So let's fill it up. Let's do our own governance, and set up our own independent governance structures. So that's what I would suggest people to do. I mean, it's a beautiful idea to think in terms of revolution and overthrowing the system, like a revolution, but it's more revolution to me is more of a process, not an event, and it starts at the local and united networked locals. I think can do a lot, because after you get the locals, what else is left? If the people take control of their local communities, what else is left? You've taken what they wanted, and so we have to take. And this is a good time, because people are in the spirit of taking back, reclaiming everything. This movement is not a coincidence or an accident that we're calling it reclaiming. We want to take back everything that's ours, and we can do that together at the local level.
Yeah. Well, Roberto, I thank you so much for your time. This has been very informative. I learned quite a bit from it, and hopefully the audience has too. Very inspiring as well. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, looking forward to working with you in the future.
Me too. Thank you.